Welcome to The Common Creative. I'm Paul Fairweather.
And I'm Chris Meredith.
And Chris and I are on a mission to unlock the secrets of creativity in life and business through the lens of idea stories, visual cognition, and theatre directing. And look, this week, this is a mini episode that we recorded after we recorded our last week's episode with Frank Newman. And just some stuff about ego was very important. I think about ego and creativity. So look, a short discussion. Let's not beat around the bush. Let's
get Frank back for yet more powerful insights. So Frank, everyone's favourite subject, the role of ego. And I think we all went, oh, me, tell us more.
Oh God, it's funny. I think because I haven't heard much this talked about very much, but I think there is a role of ego in creativity, and I think ego is a real driver. And it's that thing about creativity having an intentionality or a purpose. And I think sometimes creative people are competing to have the most creative idea, or competing to have the next idea. It's like, oh, I've got an exciting idea too. I want to push this, and I think the role of ego is definitely a driver. It's not the only driver. I mean, I think the role of empathy is also a kind of a driver of creativity, and sort of empathizing with people. But I think the role of ego is, I don't hear it talked about much in the realm of creativity, and I think it's something which, certainly I wouldn't mind thinking about a bit more.
It sounds like it might be a dangerous driver. If you're competing, my idea is better than your idea, rather than let me think about your idea. How can we build on it? Where does it lead? No, shove your ideas to one side, because you're going to hear Is it a dangerous driver, do you think?
I don't think so. No, I think you can balance. I think the ego can. It's not always about kind of, I think the ego can be balanced with great sort of really strong values and fun competitiveness. And there's a joy to it, hang about, but also an edge. It's like people that can sort of, when you play, there's that sort of competitive. I want to have a really good idea, and I know that's a bit of a taboo to talk about. Oh, me, but in a sense, I think that is a driver. It is part of our personalities,
Yeah.
And so that does have a role in the creative process, particularly in collaborative creative processes. And so I think shunning it would be just to ignore something that's in the room, that's there. And so I think kind of acknowledging it and using it and embracing it is probably something we should think about more, or I should think about more, in my work.
Yeah, I have a view as an architect, and I spent 30 years as an architect. I have a very strong view, and certainly in architecture, when collaboration turns into collaboration, where I
love that too,
as I coined that. But the thing about it is that it is a paradox, because in order to drive through an idea or a concept, you need a strong ego, because you have so many competing forces, in approvals and funding and market perception. There's so many things, and you need to think. But also, architecture is incredibly collaborative, because one person cannot create a building, and one person can't even create design and documents for you could for a small building, but most buildings, it is very collaborative. So what I think it comes down to two things. One is clear boundaries, and the other is respect for the abilities. And I've had lots of collaborations, and some of them have been very successful, and some of them have reached their use by date, which is ignored to my peril, because in the end the ego rises up. We all want to be seen and heard. It is a paradox. I think it is important. In fact, we haven't had him on, but we've tried to get him on. We should try again. Sir Hegarty, Chris.
Yeah, John Hegarty.
In his book, he talks about, basically ego is not a dirty word. And he says you have to have ego. And it's one of the few things that I've read where, it's really pushed. What I think is also very important, and I think this is something you just said actually off air before we turned this back on again, was the importance of an audience. And that's something that I'm sort of coming, more, it's partly our tribe, but it is an audience. And once we put things out there, you get feedback. And often that can be something that can temper ego. I'm assuming in your field as well, a great actor who's just, when says a big need, then, they get So.
Yeah, but I think it's also, definitely that's a sort of an easy way to conceptualize it, that the actor needs the kind of audience, and the artwork needs the audience to view it. But I think on a really simple level, like when when you have got a series of semi-formed ideas, when you have to explain it to somebody, that brings the ideas together. So it's the audience. It's the fact that you have to land the idea in that other person's mind. You have to land that idea. So you have to make sense of the idea. So you are forced to bring those ideas together. And that's the creative process. And so the audience kind of helps that happen. So it doesn't happen, like, yes, the creativity is all there in your mind, of all the ideas are floating around, but it's like part of it is having those listeners for you to kind of actually go, okay, boom, I need to make this happen because I'm doing it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I mean by the audience.
So that leans neatly into a theme I've been dying to ask you about, which is what I'm delighted Paul's hit the record button again, was just the role of play in creativity. And I know you've done lots of work with kids, and you kind of, yeah, of course, let kids play. That's what kids do. And one of the areas that I find difficult to kind of get my head around is how you encourage adults to play, which I think is a really important part of the creative process. And I think you might have given me two clues. One is this idea of competition is being a good thing to kind of encourage people, because I think adults are very good at competition. They know all about competition. And the other might be this idea of performing, playing in front of an audience as a way of stimulating creativity. Because I think performing to an audience and competition are both things adults assimilate very well, and they all fall under that umbrella of playing with an idea and experimenting. And so I guess that was a long way of saying, do you agree with that? Are those formats for introducing play to adults, or are there others that I should know about?
Yeah, listen, I think with adults, because they'll all sort of stand back and go, oh, play, like, particularly in a workplace, it's like, everyone's come to that, the last thing they do is, if you tell them what you're going to do at the beginning of the workshop, and you're actually honest, that's already set up. So you need to just gently sort of ratchet it up. You need to sort of start really simply and non-confrontationally. And I always start with joyful, playful games where the rules of the game take care of you. So you don't have to do anything other than just follow the rules. And by following the rules, you succeed in having fun. And so all of a sudden people are laughing and joking, and they're kind of they're feeling relaxed. And then slowly the kinds of play will change to more unstructured play.
Yeah.
You go from super highly structured where they're taken care of by the rules, where they can't fail. There's no such thing as failure in play. You can't fail at play, or you can't, and there's always an option to sit out. There's always options with adults, and then you kind of slowly ratchet up the kind of, you make it more and more unstructured, so they're more and more comfortable to just be playful. And it's it depends on the environment and where you are, but kind of mostly that process happens pretty quickly.
I
was
good to that feeling of safety, that feeling of not being judged, that allows people to just express themselves.
Yeah. And also giving, like, simple things like, what I mean by structured play, but literally saying things like, you can't use jargon. You can't use jargon. In fact, let's use rude words. You have to, let's insert rude words into kind of tell me about your job, and you have to use at least 5 swear words, and you can make those swear words up, right? And just tell me about it, and everyone goes, am I allowed? And you're like, yes, you're allowed. It's just so back, you have to. That's the rule of the game. And all of a sudden, the jobs become really funny, and
Correct.
And so that's a rule, right? You can't, everyone knows how to swear. And so you allow people to be a little bit deviant. And
love it. A little bit deviant. Correct.
Frank, I just wanted to, that's a great insight, and it's something that I must think about at some of my workshops and masterclasses I run. I'm thinking about the ego and the audience and having to explain things. And it's a link back to some of our previous guests, and we had a series a couple of years ago on neuroscience, and we had one, Selena Bartlett, who is a neuroscientist, does a lot of stuff with addiction, but she talked about ideation, and that basically they've done studies where in a room, if you express an idea and ideation's working properly, then it'll spark a different idea in your head, a different idea in Chris's head, and that's what we do. But the problem comes when we're trying to sell that idea, and if I go to a meeting and I've done the ideation, I've got all the ideas I want, I pick one, I present it to the meeting, and then the chairman or the board goes, that's a great idea, I got a better idea. So we want to avoid that, because that's the ego. And where that comes from is another guest of ours, Yuri Hasson, who is a storyteller from Princeton, into the great, fantastic TED Talk. And he says that what happens is that, you actually use that word about implanting the idea. So what happens when you tell a story, and they've done these studies using fMRI, that, the brainwaves of when I heard the story are the same as when I saw it, are the same as when you hear the story. So, the idea is, or the sort of the method is to take the idea, embed it in a story, and most often a personal story, which then can embed that idea in someone else's head, almost like the Trojan horse of ideas. And in a way, to tell a good personal story, you have to have an ego.
Yeah.
So it comes around in a full circle.
Yeah.
I really love that. And I think it's something that I really I'm going to think about. There's so many things in this little mini episode that we've done with you and our previous episode that is going to be great food for thought for me.
Awesome.
Thank you, Frank. So I love those moments when our guest thinks we've stopped recording and they give another half dozen powerful insights. And so, yes, the importance and risks of an ego in the creative process, how to incorporate play in the creative process. I love that idea about swear words. It just seems so wicked and deviant. And yet it'll unlock a lot of great creativity. So yes.
Yeah, no, it's a freaking good idea, Chris, and it was a bloody good idea to turn it back on so we could get some more insight. So if you've enjoyed this episode, please tune in next week for
Natalie Konya, published author, a crime writer, and a brilliant creative in their own right. We'll see you next week.